Hey everyone, welcome to our brand new podcast, Life at Sage. It seems fitting that our very first podcast is all about starting a career with a technology company. You may have read some of our articles that deep dive into the world of SaaS internships, apprenticeships, and graduate schemes. But today, we're going to be looking at things from a more personal angle, because I'm here with Vicky Rowland, who's Global Talent Lead for Early Careers with Sage, essentially overseeing the process of bringing new interns, apprentices, and graduates through the door. Vicky has an incredible story to tell of triumph in the face of adversity in relation to her own early career. Because, just a few short weeks after beginning her English degree back at the turn of the Millennium, she was forced to leave university due to a rather shocking revelation. Stick around and find out what that was. Hi, Vicky. Really great to meet you. Thanks for joining us. I was looking at the little biog you sent in prep for this interview, and this tracks with your career trajectory, at least in my mind, as someone who went on to become Global Early Careers Lead. But you opened your biog by saying you had really a kind of shocking revelation right after you began your degree that kind of forced you to an immediate standstill for a minute there. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I make it sound like a breeze now, don't I? But I can guarantee you that at the time, it certainly wasn't. And I think this sort of unflappable and resilient attitude that I have now is really thanks to what happened in my past. As I mentioned, I went to university, all good intentions. I was, from a young age, very career driven. I kind of knew that I wanted to be in a professional world somewhere, albeit at the time, I didn't really know where. So I was going off to university to do my English degree. And as I say, after a few weeks, I thought, something's not right. I wasn't partying, I was very new at university, so it definitely wasn't down to parties and late nights. I was only just getting settled in. After a few weeks of sort of tests and things, we understood that I was pregnant, and it came as a huge shock. My first thoughts were, my mum and dad are very traditional. And, this isn't going to go down at all well. My second thoughts were, oh, my goodness, my future is completely ruined. So after a bit of umming and ahhing about how best to break the news, I decided that mum was probably the safest option. And she was, they're both hugely supportive, but mum was a little bit more understanding. So had a conversation with her and I had to leave university after some difficult conversations. And I remember spending... This sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. I remember spending a day hiding under my bed, waiting for my mom to tell my dad, and then coming out to face the music, because it was a scary time, let alone the fact that I had this little person growing inside me as well. So hormones were all over the place, as you can imagine. But I was most disappointed with the fact that I couldn't continue to study, because study for me was everything. I lived and breathed it. I'd always been hugely academic. And for me, this was the end. That was it. I couldn't go on anymore.
That must have been such a challenging thing to deal with at such a young age. How did you deal with the transition from student to parent? I mean, how does anyone deal with that?
So, to cut a long story short, after multiple discussions and my dad not speaking to me for 6 weeks, I found out that I was so far gone in my pregnancy that I only actually had 2 months to adjust from life at university to being a mum. And the long-term partner that I had been with, in fact, the only person I had ever been in a relationship with, denied all knowledge. So I was very much on my own in this big, scary world, about to be a mum at just 18 years old. Moving on from there, obviously having Jade, my family are hugely supportive. I can never say that I was on my own. I certainly wasn't. I had an amazing mum and dad who are actually divorced, but get on extremely well. And they supported me through the whole of that challenging period, from finding out to the shock of, oh my goodness, this is going to happen to me in about 6 weeks. And then having this baby and still effectively being a baby myself, But everything happens for a reason. And I had a fantastic time with Jade, being a mum and obviously independently. However, I decided that was great, but that wasn't enough. So maybe foolishly, I decided that when Jade was 6 months, I'm going to get a part-time job and I'm going to study for my degree, because being a mom and not having any sleep wasn't enough. So I think I functioned on around about an hour to 2 hours sleep a day. My routine was very much Jade first, look after this beautiful baby of mine. But then it was a case of, okay, well, I need to fit in 5 hours of study and I need to work a part-time job for 4.5 hours. So I just made it work. So I'm a firm believer that when people say to me, oh, I don't really have time to do that, I think, have you got time to do that? I think if I could find it then, you can certainly find it now. So yeah, I sound like a martyr, and I don't mean it to sound like that at all, but I just found that I had this drive and this motivation to succeed at all costs. But as long as my primary role for me, which was caregiver to my beautiful daughter, was not interfered with.
I want to dig a little deeper into your story, if I may. You said that your dad stopped talking to you for 6 weeks when he first found out. I mean, there are hints of gender and broader social politics we could get into regarding that, but simply from a personal perspective, that must have been a very hard thing for you to deal with. What was it like when he finally moved past it and started to accept things?
The moment I realised that he'd forgiven me and accepted and was probably excited actually about what was happening, was when we went to supermarkets. And of course I was heavily pregnant, but it's important to say that when I was heavily pregnant, I was actually only 6 months, because I didn't go full term. She was early, and I had a bump the size of a pea. Being 6 months, I was a size 6, I was tiny, so nobody could tell that I was pregnant, and that's why I physically didn't know until very late on that there were no physical indicators. And we were at a supermarket, and I was packing shopping away, and he turned around and said, "No, don't lift that." And that little gesture of acknowledging that actually my daughter's pregnant, I don't want her to lose the baby through any sort of physical strenuous activity. And I just thought, oh, he's accepted it. And it was a really nice moment. And I cried walking out of Sainsbury's. And I think he got quite emotional too, because he realised that actually things happen, and it's how you move together as a family unit that are the important things. My dad's main disappointment was that he had high hopes of me. I'm the only girl. I've got 2 older brothers, much older brothers, and they've gone into construction industry or trades. And my dad's so proud of me being an academic, that he was almost disappointed, not so much about the age or anything, but that my career was ruined. So you can imagine that as I studied, got my first degree, and then did another degree, that he was very happy with the way things have turned out for me.
Yeah, it's clearly a very happy ending to the story in that respect. Did you worry about how to be a good mom while studying? Was there any sense of pressure or guilt you put on yourself for allowing yourself the opportunity to focus on your own development?
So, first of all, I don't think anybody's ever ready to be a parent, no matter whether they are 18 or whether they are 50. Nobody is ready to be a parent. This beautiful bundle of joy comes with a lot of noise and not an instruction manual. So I hadn't had an awful lot of exposure to babies at that age. Most kids don't, unless they have younger siblings. And obviously, when you hit 30 and you have children, friends around you are having children, you've sort of got experience there. Well, I was 18. Nobody was having children, until some of them still haven't now out of my friends' circle. So it was scary. I was an only child on my mum's side, so her only daughter, but my dad has 2 boys, which, as I said, are elder, and they're my half brothers, who we get on like a house on fire, and we are brother and sister. My oldest brother had children, but I didn't have a lot to do with them, being sort of younger myself. They were around about 3, 4, 5. So I hadn't been through the process of looking after a child. I didn't know what to do. I remember Jade was in special care baby unit because she was 6 weeks premature. So while she was perfectly healthy, she was only £3.7, so tiny little thing, really tiny. So I had that to deal with as well. And the midwife said to me, "So you're going home tomorrow." This was after 4 days. "Do you know what you're doing?" And I just cried and went, "No, I don't know how to." She said, "Oh, you don't need to bath her immediately. Just top and tail her." I'm thinking, what on earth is top and tail? This sounds like a torture implementation or something. What is top and tail? So all these things that people assume you know as a mum of any age or a father of any age, you don't. And there's no manual. And I relied heavily on my mum to guide me with even things like nappies and the worst job in the world. But they say it's instinctive. It's not. You have to learn. There's a technique. So I didn't do health and social care. It wasn't available as a child. I didn't do any form. I did like design and technology and mechanical engineering as a kid. I was quite tomboyish in my earlier years. So yeah, that none of that was available to me. It was very much I had to learn it and wing it. So of course, not only did I have to learn my academics, my English degree, I had to learn how to be a mum as well. And it wasn't always easy. If she was crying at 2 or 3 in the morning and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've got a dissertation at 9 o'clock tomorrow, how am I going to get through this? People said, did you build up any resentment to having Jade? Well, the answer is no, there was definitely no resentment. She was an absolute joy to my life. However, there were times when I think, what have I done? why am I doing this? And not the having a baby part, but the why have I done a degree and why have I got a part-time job? We used to joke, and this is probably an improper reference, but we used to joke and say, well, why didn't I just spend days watching Jeremy Kyle on the sofa and having a baby? Well, because that's not me.
Are you the kind of person who needs to be busy all the time?
Yes. Can you tell? If I'm not busy, my mind goes into, I guess, kind of overdrive and thinks, well, I'm not doing something. What should I be doing next? And I find it really hard to relax completely. I actually have a guilty pleasure, which, believe it or not, I'm 42 now, so maybe it's not the right one, but I like video games. And do you know why I like video games? It's because I can immerse myself into mindless action that I don't think about anything else. So I almost have to do that religiously for an hour or so to fill my void with something that's either not work or doing things for others. I think it shows that I'm not good with not being busy, because not only do I have a very busy role at Sage as the Global Early Careers Lead, which I love, which I know we can talk about a bit more, but I also, that wasn't enough. So I took on a voluntary directorship of a company called Trans in the City, which works with employers and trans and non-binary people in the community. So when people say to me, what do you do in your spare time? Well, there isn't a lot of that. It's predominantly work. Again, it's a passion. And I try and do a little bit of gym just to make myself sound better and feel better. But yeah, so I do struggle when there's not lots going on. And I know that that's a really good thing, but I also know it can be quite detrimental as well. So I'm finding ways to work with that, to be quite frank.
Detrimental in what ways? That's interesting.
I think detrimental in the sense that if you never have any downtime, how can you rest and recharge and be amazing at what you're doing? You run the risk of burning yourself out because of this overwhelming need to be busy and constantly have your fingers in lots of pies. I personally have found ways of delegating, because as you can imagine, for somebody like me, delegating can be very hard. So I've managed to find methods. The fact I have an amazing team really, really helps. But I managed to find methods that I actually go, right, no, I'm not going to do anything for the next 30 minutes other than focus on this other task and let everything around me unfold and watch how it goes. I wouldn't be able to do that before because I have to be into everything.
Well, I don't want to connect the dots for you or anything, but where do you think that inability to relax comes from personally?
So we hear a lot now, and this is something that I've probably never actually said openly to anybody other than my family or my partner, so it's quite interesting actually. But we hear a lot now about people not being diagnosed who potentially are neurodiverse in adult life. So people go through their adult life without ever realizing that they might be neurodiverse. And we've made a few jokes over the years about how I'm possibly OCD. In fact, I guarantee you I'm OCD. I know that I have my little quirks and my routines, but maybe borderline ADHD as well. And while I'm self-diagnosing in a way, but I have done some independent research which shows that people need to be busy with the OCD compulsion of having to fill your time with stuff. And I do look at research and think, yeah, everything that you've just asked in this poll, this survey, it kind of sums me up perfectly. So I think there's an underlying neurodiverse streak, which I'm happy to own and I'm very proud of, because it really helps me motivate myself as well. But also, I think going back to when I was studying, when I was working, when I was a parent, having now, say, 4 hours spare time, or, at the weekend, having it's an incredible amount of time, and I'm almost feeling guilty about, well, hang on, I should be doing something constructive with this. So if I do switch off and play a video game, or even go to the gym, or go and see friends, I'm always thinking, oh, there's probably something more important I should be doing. And that's something that I'm getting better at, saying, well, actually, if you are having downtime and you're resting and you're relaxing, that is important, because without that, you can't do the rest of the things that you really want to do and add value to other projects.
Does it affect relationships?
Yes, because I am, as we say, stereotypically, I guess you could look and see OCD featuring heavily in my life. And what comes with that is this intense, I guess, desire to have everything in order. So you can imagine, as a relationship perspective for my partner, and even for Jade growing up indoors, everything has to be in its place. Everything has to be spotless. Because when things are disorganized, for example, now I'm looking around and I can see there's a plate in the sink. You can guarantee I didn't leave it there. But that plays on my mind. So as I'm working and I'm in meetings, I will go, right, plate in the sink, plate in the sink. You almost sort of dwell on it so much that it becomes this overwhelming compulsion to remove the plate in the sink. So I'm talking about something as an example, but my partner would tell you that I am very over the top when it comes to things being in their place. And I don't deal well with, I'll call it upheaval. If we're moving, or if things have to be bad, put in storage, whatever, that doesn't sit well with me. And that's something that I really struggle with. So yeah, having order and no chaos around me is really contributes to a positive working environment, which is why I love being in the office, because generally speaking around me, it's very, very clean, it's very organized. But I do find that I struggle with noise, background noise. So again, I was diagnosed with something called misophonia. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a sensitivity to noise. And it can be noises that people cannot help but make, but chewing, crunching, crisps and general rustling. So if I am working on a project, I have to shut myself away in a room because I can't concentrate.
How about in terms of relationships at work? Does needing to be busy all the time affect how you get along with colleagues?
It's quite funny at the moment. I'm working on a way of implementing actions for the team in a way that works for everybody. I appreciate that everybody's different, and I love that everybody's different. So we're working on ways that don't just work for one person, they've got to work for us as a collective, right? So tracking actions somewhere, rather than me firing out these requests that we're getting, because that's how my mind works at pace. We're getting better at just slowing down, going, okay, right, so these are the tasks, these are priorities, and these are nice to have. Let's work on this together. So I guess that my fast pace could probably hinder other people's performance if they're not used to it. My team are all very high performing, very fast paced. So thankfully it works. But I can see how it could affect a relationship if somebody is polar opposite. But I think, again, it wouldn't affect the relationship because you communicate and you say, well, okay, this is my working style. I realize it's not perfect. What's your working style? Tell me how I can work with you better. And vice versa. And I think having that open channel of communication, particularly giving feedback on things that work for you and things that don't, is really important.
I want to take this back to the idea of your own early career and the challenge of studying while pretty much being a brand new mom. I can't help but wonder if there's a connection between the idea of the pressure you faced back then, having to quit your studies, having a child, and then going back to start over on your studies, and this subsequent lifelong sense of having to stay busy all the time.
I think you've alluded to something there, is that this incessant need to be busy now and to constantly drive and challenge myself comes from, I went through the worst of times in a way, and anything I do now is not even comparable to what I did then. I could have the biggest, meatiest project going on at work that's taking all of my time. I've still got 6-7 hours to sleep. It's nothing. It's nothing in comparison.
Interesting. I was kind of getting that sense from very early on in the conversation. I wanted to ask too, kind of veering off the restlessness topic, about being left by your partner after learning you were pregnant. Does that say something about the perceived responsibilities of women back at the end of the 90s, and have things changed favorably?
It was a funny old situation, because when you look back and you look at young love and you think, oh, he was absolutely everything. And well, when I look back, I think there should have been red flags from the beginning. He was not absolutely everything. He was a bit older. And I guess there's an appeal there, isn't there, as a young, effectively a teenage sort of girl. But I look back and think, I'm so glad that you're not in Jade's life, because you're not a role model. So for me, I think you're right. It made me stronger as a woman. It did negative things for a while. It made me think, well, actually, I don't need a man. I don't need a relationship. I don't want a relationship. It's always going to end up badly. And that affected me for quite a long time. It sort of taught me early on that I need to be independent, and that actually nobody's going to look after you other than you. But what I've realised through the years is that's true. And self-preservation needs to be there. And I'm very independent. I can live on my own and run my own home and, do all the other good things. But actually, I don't want to, because there are really good people out there. And having the right person in your life can only complement it.
Do you think all of these experiences made you feel like you had to work twice as hard as everyone else to get to where you are? Did you feel like you had to study twice as hard when you went to the Open University, for instance?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a little story that when I originally went for my first job in London, which I'm glad I didn't get, because it wouldn't have been right being a mum and being in London. It was just at the time there was no flexible working. You were in the office 8 till 6. I did that eventually, but when Jade was 10. But I remember going to my first interview and them saying, well, you haven't got a red brick university degree, so we're not interested. I was thinking, hang on a minute. I've got friends that are at red brick universities and they're not doing any work. They're just drinking every night. they're turning up for lectures when they fancy, whereas I'm solidly doing 4 hours a day, refining my learning and even doing extended research, because I had this drive to prove other people wrong. There were incidents when I would be walking down the road with Jade in a pushchair, and people would sneer or sort of turn their nose up and make comments. I think, well, hang on a minute, you don't know anything about me, but you're passing judgment, because I did look very young. And yeah, it was like, oh, there's this young mum, she will amount to nothing. And I thought I had to challenge every stereotype there was, prove everybody wrong. And I think that that's probably why I went into overdrive. And like I said to you, when I did complete the first degree and sort of got a really good result, I went and did another one, because people were saying, well, okay, it's enough now. Like, no, when will it ever be enough? I need to prove that women particularly, and young women that go through challenges, can be anything that they want to be. My career trajectory has, of course, been different. But I'm confident that I'm in a similar role that I would have been if I'd have gone through the red brick uni, as everyone says that I should have at the time.
Have you maintained that passion for study into your adulthood and your career at Sage?
I'm actually about to undergo, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but actually about to undergo another degree. So I've decided that I want to undertake a chartered management degree apprenticeship, and Sage are fantastic and are supporting my development, of course. And through the government levy, I'll be taking this CMDA. I am now concerned that because I pushed myself so hard when I was younger, I've got a lot to live up to. So if I don't get the equivalent of a first in this CMDA now, with everything else I've got going on with work, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. So when we're talking about high achievement, people often feel the need to achieve highly because of the pressure from the community around them. The only real pressure to achieve highly, I put on myself, and I put on myself with no mercy.
What does your story tell other young people who have gone through, or maybe going through right now, challenging periods in their lives, and who may be thinking about whether or not they'll be able to continue studying?
It sounds cliche, but I'm fortunate to work for a company where we really genuinely care about breaking down barriers for everybody. There are no exceptions. We want everybody to thrive. So in this day and age, I know that there are amazing companies like Sage that support people to do that. But I think that the moral of my story is that even when you hit your lowest time, I can guarantee you that you can help yourself get through that, and you can still achieve what you want to get through, although the light at the tunnel seems very dull at the time. As I said, I've been very fortunate to have networks of support around me, which I understand that not everybody has. But it's about finding your network of support. If it's not your family, then there are so many organisations out there that will support you, whether it's healthy mind coaches, well-being. There are lots of people. And I think that if you talk things through with people, you're never alone. So my advice would be push yourself, challenge yourself daily. You can achieve anything that you set your mind to, but just make sure that you establish that network support around you.
Was your life experience an influence on your decision to get into early careers? And by early careers, I mean your role driving talent acquisition at Sage through internships, apprenticeships, and graduate programs. Did your own life experiences influence that?
Funny enough, I fell into early careers, and it was the best fall I've ever had in my life. I worked for Sage from 2017, and I came in a supporting role to the president, who's now retired. And I was working as his executive assistant. Previously, I'd worked at a reinsurance company for the CEO, absolutely loved it, and had a call from Sage saying, we've got this really interesting job, working for a guy that's based in Connecticut. What do you think? And I thought, nothing will ever make me leave my ex-employer. And here I'm at Sage today, loving it, never looked back. And as I say, I came in quite high level supporting role to the ELT, as they're known now. And when my former boss retired, an opportunity had opened up with something called early careers, which I had no idea what it meant, I'll be perfectly honest. What I did know from a young age is that I either wanted to go into journalism because of the English degree, or I wanted to go into HR. And I'd never really had the opportunity to move into the HR field previously. I thought I don't have the skill sets, I didn't really know what I needed, but I thought I didn't have them because I'd never gone and done an HR degree. I was given the opportunity to, as I say, branch into early careers initially as a talent acquisition partner, which I found out meant bringing young people or people that are returning to work into the business as an apprentice, a graduate, or an intern. And my role has really grown from there. We're now looking at entry into Sage, as it's known, sort of encompassing early careers and pathways. It's huge. We're striving towards great things, of having 10% of all colleagues at Sage on programme by FY28 as early careers hires. So as you can imagine, not only has my role gone from being one person acting as a lone wolf to now expanding into this amazing entry into Sage function, responsible for the strategy, the engagement and traction, and the recruitment and furthermore development of all these young people. I've watched my own role evolve. So when I look back and think, is this what I pictured going into when I was doing my English degree? Probably not, if I'm honest. But would I look back and do things differently? Absolutely not. It's kind of my dream career. And it's also helping me help other people get through a professional capacity.
How does it make you feel to see other people coming up through the business who might have overcome challenging experiences of their own?
Without sharing others' personal stories, as an overview, there are a lot of people within Sage that have come through the early careers programme that have had their own challenges, albeit very different. But I can honestly say that each and every one of them, we've got National Apprenticeship Week going on at the moment, and my team have been busy sourcing stories of success. There were so many stories of success. We're thinking we've only got 5 days. How are we possibly going to fit this in? And everybody has their own challenges, whether it's personal. People have come through the business like me, face challenges in that sense and thriving. Other people, maybe they come from sort of lower socioeconomic backgrounds and haven't had the opportunity to go to university. We've had people that have come through that care for parents or grandparents, and therefore their learning has what they called hindered. But for me, just watching these people come through and thrive is exactly the reason why myself and my team exist. You hear breaking down barriers thrown around in a lot of companies quite freely. And when I look at what they're actually doing, I think, when I look at what Sage are doing, we're talking about, yes, we've got a graduate programme and it's amazing. But actually, there's the apprentice programme too. Have you heard the apprentice programme? All you need is 5 GCSEs and sometimes just 2 GCSEs to get through, because we want to give everybody the opportunity. We don't expect everyone to be an academic. It's down to us to nurture and develop this high performance talent as it comes through the business.
Do you think there's a difference between an apprenticeship and a graduate program still in terms of status?
At Sage, definitely not. Our apprentices, graduates, and interns mix together not only socially, but for example, with the non-technical program, we have a learning and development program just launched in October for anybody that's a non-technical grad apprentice or apprentice, sorry. And these people all go through the same learning, irrespective of whether they come to us from university or college or school. And that is going really well. We mix the groups up deliberately, so you'll have a nice mix of graduates and apprentices, because what we find is irrespective of their entry into Sage, they're all working, or they're all at least developing towards this, I guess, passion for learning. Willingness to learn is actually more important than existing knowledge, because we can teach them everything they need to know about Sage and potentially the role. But what we can't teach is the aptitude. And like I say, the willingness to succeed, the ability to collaborate with others and have empathy for others is a high key skill at Sage, because you're constantly working with other teams. And as I said earlier, there's not one style of working. We all have very individual methods of working. So I think that when I compare grads and apprentices at Sage, there's no difference. The only difference is that a graduate might have more technical knowledge, but there's a reason why we don't bring in apprentices at this stage and put them straight into a developer role, expecting them to be able to know the language and perform. We develop that person before they're actually able to sort of develop the language themselves. So from a capability perspective, I personally do not see a difference between grads and apprentices.
Okay, yeah, you also briefly touched on internships there. What's the reason someone would want to do an internship? What difference is it going to make to their future?
So internships at Sage can either be 3 months, as in sort of a summer placement, or a 12-month placement. And I think for the student, it's particularly important that they get industry insight. And actually, it's a sense check. When they go through the internship, what they've been studying for, is that actually what they want to do for the rest of their life? It really gives them that, yes, I love this, or no, I'm going to change my career path. From a Sage perspective, an internship is the talent pipeline for the graduate program. We bring them in. It's almost like a trial period for Sage as well. The intern comes in, they complete amazing work, and then the natural thing for us to do is want to offer them to come back the following year when they complete their studies. Apprentice and graduate program is much more developed, and we have a lot more people on the program than we do internships, but it is something that we're developing at the moment.
As someone who's as passionate as you are about academic endeavor, how do you feel when you hear someone say they're thinking about maybe not going to university? Do you feel like there's any kind of compromise in that decision?
I don't think there's a compromise, and I think that different routes are right for different people. So there are people that will want to go to university, will want to get that specialist knowledge, and I wholeheartedly support that. You know, I'm not biased towards the apprentice or the graduate program. There are also people that, for whatever reasons, maybe it's personal situation, can't go to university, can't afford to go to university. And I think the message should be clear that no matter which path you take, your career you will excel in your career, because there's no right way about it. As I said, maybe if you want to get into AI, machine learning, maybe going to university and studying for that specialism is a really good idea, because they're going to teach you the technical skills that you need for your future career. But if you're not sure what you want to go through and you don't want to go to university, you can earn as you learn through an apprenticeship, have no student debt at the end of it. I mean, it sounds like the dream, doesn't it?
Is it the kind of thing that people who find themselves in a situation similar to the one you went through 25 years ago might have the opportunity to now more easily go out and do?
Absolutely. I still would say to that person, if your dream is to go to university and you're in my situation, then put yourself through university and go to open uni. If you really want a degree, I really wanted a degree. But you're right, now you can get your degree through your employer. We actually had an example a couple of years ago of an apprentice who came to us, passed the assessment centre, was offered the role, and then they found out that they were pregnant, so they deferred the apprenticeship. Now, as a result of actually expanding their family further, they didn't come to work at Sage in the end, But I have no doubt that they will come to us in future and possibly be a mature apprentice and take on that apprenticeship that they would have done back in 2022.
Wow, all of these experiences. I know you're also very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, having been a founder member of the Pride Network at Sage. Do you feel that your life experience as a young mom and your professional trajectory into early careers have made you more empathetic to people with protected characteristics and have driven your desire to be as actively involved in DEI as you are?
Yeah, really good point. I grew up, on top of everything else I did when I was younger, I also attended performing arts school and was in quite a few musicals as well. So I've got that element to me. And growing up in what was a very diverse environment, as you can imagine, in musical theatre, I had the luxury of being friends with many people from the LGBTQ plus community at a very young age, which was a little bit rarer, I guess, in other areas. So I had this amazing, diverse group of friends and contacts. And I experienced when we were together in our sort of academic environment, everything was great. But when we used to go out, I experienced a lot of bullying from the public towards them. And being an ally, I sort of stepped up and said, hey, you can't speak to people like that. It's not right. And it sort of escalated from there. I founded the Pride Network at my previous employer purely because there was a very senior member of, what we would call the ELT. Thankfully, he's retired now, but he was at the photocopier and he kicked the photocopy and he said, this photocopy is so gay. And being new and a junior, I said, what do you mean then? It's wonderful. It's doing really good work. I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused here. And I thought, that's it. I've lost my job. But the defense mechanism in me to support others, even when they're not present, it's resonated with me through my career. So you're right. When I'm looking at people, talent that other people would call diverse, I guess I'm looking to think, well, actually, this person maybe is neurodiverse, so needs a bit more support in this area. How can we, as employers, support them? This person might be trans or non-binary and is not as confident in an interview as somebody who's not might be. What can we do as an employer to support them and make them feel more comfortable? And that's why my team are very good at doing employability sessions for, I guess, underrepresented communities to really help them thrive in interviews, not just at Sage, but across the board.
Okay, I would suspect there are some people listening who haven't heard the term allyship before in relation to DEI. I'd love to get your take on what we mean when we describe someone as an ally.
Allyship to me is standing up for others that need your support. Now, this can be anybody. And when I say need your support, it's not that they come to you and say, hey, I need your support. Can you stand up for me? Because that's very much, it's a reactive ally. Allyship is standing up for people and their beliefs, even if they don't always align with your own. When people say to me, who are you an ally to? Well, I say, well, I'm an ally to humans. You know, if an injustice is being done to humankind, then I'm an ally. I'm a stronger ally in the LGBTQ plus world because obviously of personal experiences. But being an ally means that you are not a community member directly, but you will step up for and call out, or maybe call out's the wrong word, but call in other people's behaviours and challenge when they might say or do things that hurt others.
Okay, now this may be a difficult question to answer, but for people who haven't had personal experiences that have driven their allyship like you have, why should they think about becoming an ally and how do they go about it?
I think if you look at it from a personal perspective, then obviously being an ally to people is the right thing to do. If you look at it from a professional perspective, you're opening your horizons because let's face it, with diversity comes innovation, comes fresh pairs of eyes. So if you are in the professional world and you're not an ally to others, you're kind of limiting the people that want to work with you. So if we looked at it purely from a business perspective, it's the right thing to do as a business. And as I say, it opens up innovation coming through from diverse pipeline, especially like Gen Z. From a personal perspective, I think that there's a lot of people that I've suspected wouldn't make great allies, as an example, to the LGBTQ plus community. But when they've come along and met some of my friends or I've educated them on certain issues, it's like the penny drops and they go, well, this is just the right thing to do. Now, I don't expect these people to be marching through London as I am with a placard, shouting out trans rights, human rights as an example. But what I do expect is that everybody treats each other with respect that they deserve, no matter what their background is.
So you were a founding member of the Pride Network, which must make you very proud. Tell me about it. How did that whole situation come about? And what have some of its most notable achievements been since it began? And tell me about the network.
It's a really good question because it's just grown globally. I look at it now and think, wow, that started with a handful of people in the UK. As I said, I was the founding member of a previous employer's LGBTQ plus network as an ally. And I kind of came to Sage and said to the ex-chief people officer, I noticed that you don't have an LGBTQ plus network. They said, this is a great idea. Let's get it going. And I'll be honest, it started very grassroots, a few people who identified as LGBTQ plus or their allies coming together in London Bridge at the time for drinks, who doesn't bond over going out after work or, going bowling or something. And it was almost like a social club. But the amazing thing about was the way that it started to take off, and the incredible people function, HR function at the time, saw how successful it was and saw how empowering it was for colleagues to feel a sense of belonging. That quickly from that derived colleague success networks, which were then implemented as almost supporting business functions. When I was the Pride lead, I was privy to meetings with senior DI leads, senior people leads, consulting with the business on how they can be more LGBTQ plus friendly. And our amazing lead, Josh Sadler, who's now sort of taken over from me, is continuing to grow this for the UK. And of course, it's a global initiative. And what's most, I guess, enlightening for me is watching something that was small as a group of friends going out and bonding and supporting each other is now derived into all of these other colleague success networks. Embrace, our faith network, which is newly launched, Gender Alliance. And the lovely thing about all of those networks is they are too inclusive. So Gender Alliance, for example, is female and non-binary colleagues, and everything has an essence of inclusivity. So when you get somebody saying, well, hang on, why is there not a straight white women's club, for example? My answer is there is. They're all around you, and the allies that go and join it, because that's what I'm a member of and I fit that box.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Do the colleague success networks have real world impact in terms of their effect on Sage and the way that Sage operates?
Yeah, I would like to think so. I think the real world impact, particularly in business for us, is seeing the diversity grow within talent acquisition, seeing all of these amazing candidates that are out there that might have overlooked Sage previously and gone, it's not really a company I want to work for. One of the surveys that we held with our candidates come through early careers was quite eye-opening, because they were less concerned about the salary that they'd be receiving and more concerned about how many colleague success networks we had and what we were doing for the community through Sage Foundation as an example, which kind of proves to me, and I want to do some more extensive research on it, kind of proves to me that Gen Z in particular are looking for so much more than the salary, the remuneration package, the job, the title. They're looking for that sense of belonging. And if you don't have it as an employer, you are going to be missing out on incredibly top talent because it's going to go elsewhere.
Do you ever sit back and think about how all of this relates to your own experiences in earlier life? It seems like you've had quite a big impact as an ally. Did you ever imagine, back when you first became aware of the concept of people being socially, professionally marginalized, that you'd have such a big influence?
No, because I think that my life could have gone one or two ways. It could have gone where it is now and it's great, or it could have been an absolute disaster. Let's face it, goodness knows. Family could have ostracized me and I could have been living a very different life with Jade. So when I look at businesses like now and previous and look at the impact and the legacy I've left behind at other employers, it's quite humbling in a way. And I've got no doubt as well that things are going to continue to grow. I look at the colleague success networks in awe and think, wow, I just can't believe how much this is evolving. But not just the CSNs within DEI. I'm looking at how DEI is embedded into every business function naturally. It's not contrived. All of the business leaders are reaching out to DI and just trying to become more diverse and asking people like myself, how do we do it? How do we become more attractive to LGBTQ plus people, as an example? Black women in tech. How do we target this top talent that we might be missing out on because something's just not right? And I think seeing it embedded into our everyday values is just one of the many things that keeps me at Sage.
I'd like to wrap up by asking you, Vicky Rowland, what do you think your own personal story of triumph in the face of adversity tells people who may be considering an apprenticeship or a graduate program or an internship about their own potential?
I think, again, everybody's potential is limitless. You can't go in and say, there's my bar, I've hit it, that's where I'm going to coast. I think that what I'm doing now is probably about 10 times higher than what I thought I would be doing when I found out that I was pregnant at university, because as you can imagine, expectations were low. But I'm also thinking, well, I've achieved so much. Why would I stop here and stay stagnant? I want to continue to grow. I want to develop my skill set, hence taking on yet another degree. I must be mad. But all of these things I want to take forward. And I think that's hopefully what people will take from this. I say hopefully. I teach my daughter this on a daily basis. She'll be so sick of hearing this, but I tell her the same, is that when you think you've hit the very top, the ceiling of what you're doing, do something else and bring it into it, because you will never. I want to continue learning until the day I go.
Vicky Rowland, Global Early Careers Talent Lead at Sage. Thanks for being such a fantastic first guest here on Life at Sage. To everyone out there listening, we hope it's been as illuminating for you as it has been for us. If you want to hear more, keep coming back and checking in on our new episodes on Spotify. And if you want to know more about Life at Sage, whether it's about early careers or any other work-related topic, don't forget to head over to sage.com/careers, and you can also find tons of great content on our LinkedIn page. Thanks again, Vicky Rowland, and everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.